Hello and welcome to the Stormworks developer question and answers video. In this video we'll be answering the player submitted questions that players have submitted. There's a lot of questions, there's about 500 I would say. So unfortunately we're not going to be able to get through them all, but thank you very much to everyone who have submitted questions. But we're going to try and get through as many as we can in, I would say, 30-40 minute video perhaps. So yeah, let's get straight to it. The footage here is pre-recorded footage, so I don't have to play and answer questions at the same time, which I am not very good at. I can only do one thing at a time. So let's get going with the questions. First question, will there be any more natural disasters? I like the suggestion. I think the natural disasters have worked well. The question suggests flash floods, hurricanes, water spouts. I think these are good ideas. I think the natural disasters fits the theme of the game well, so it's something we're open to. As an answer I am going to repeat many times. I think in this Q&A video a lot of these questions are, can we have feature X, feature Y, and I think a lot of the answers are going to be, we're not currently planning on it, we don't have it scheduled, but when we've done more stuff and we've got less going on, we might consider it. And I'll just give some feedback and say I like the idea. Unfortunately, I can't give definitive answers on this stuff. Typically, we just make the decision further on, close to the time. I don't think it really helps for us to be making decisions so early on. We've already got kind of 6-12 months of work planned at the moment. So it's not necessarily like good for us to try and guess what our position will be in 6-12 months. It's better to just make the decisions when we get there. So yeah, sorry, unfortunately I just don't know, but we'll certainly be considering more features once we've got less going on. That could be one of them, I don't know. Next question, is there a rope type interactable coming that can move ammunition? I think this is unlikely. We understand the players' need, particularly for the smaller weapons where you've it's a little more difficult. You don't really have the space, but like some of the larger turrets that players have made are absolutely incredible with the ammo feeding systems, rotating parts and stuff. They look amazing. For the actual smaller turrets, obviously that's not practical because they're smaller. There's not enough space to put ammo feeding systems in. So we understand why players want the rope type interactable. However, I think if we actually just did a rope type interactable, players would be pretty disappointed because it would just be kind of like, it would look like a rope, right? And it would be this loose inflex, like sagging rope like all the other ropes and the hoses and so on. So I think players are really asking for these kind of like semi-stiff ammunition belt style flexible belts. And I think that's a very, very different thing. It's not just as adding a new rope type, changing the colour of the rope, maybe making it a bit thicker. It's a case of, you know, creating this new physics system. So I think that's probably unlikely. Other questions, I think we'll get to them, but are saying, can we do more on weapons, perhaps do some rebalancing. I think we are open to the idea of increasing the ammo capacities if that helps. Also looking at how the damage penetration works and stuff. I think if that helps, then that is also stuff we could look at. Again, these features aren't scheduled, don't know if and when they'll happen, but it's stuff we're open to. I think the rope type interactable, I think it's just probably a bit too much work in terms of we have to invent some new physics system to get that to work, so we'd probably look for different solutions to that problem. Next question, are there plans for more train parts like steam driving wheels or single axis bogies? So there are not. Again, another feature request that we don't have planned at the moment, but I do like it. I think it would make a lot of sense. Further down, I think we're going to see questions about more train lines and stuff, and we do have that planned. So I think this would make sense as an update, and I think that it could be quite a nice, maybe minor update or series of minor updates to add more train parts, considering our plans to add a lot more train line, which we'll get to in the future questions. Are you going to add stronger pumps for submarines? Is the next question. I think I understand what this question means. They're asking about the there's basically the maximum pressure of a pump in Stormworks currently, due to how the fluid system works, is the pressure, max pressure is equivalent to about the pressure you would get once you were 100 meters underwater. And the problem there is, obviously, once you go below 100 meters, there's no pump that is powerful enough to overcome the pressure outside of the submarine. So this would require a bit of a rework to the fluid system. You can already go deeper if you just kind of get your pressure to kind of an equilibrium state, and then just do forward momentum with the fins, or use thrusting up and down in order to move your submersible. But it's not, I don't think it's going to be possible to do kind of a blow ballast kind of maneuver where you can change the buoyancy of the submarine directly. And this is simply because it's just how the fluid system works. There's just kind of an internal number there which says, well, the maximum pressure is the same pressure as the 100 meters underwater, and that's just for stability within the system itself in terms of keeping the numbers stable. So probably not, but don't know. Could change our minds, but probably not right now. Next question. Will we get an armour revamp? This is a highly requested feature and a highly duplicated question in this Q&A video. So I think, we would rather not, but the fact that so many players are asking for it does make us want to do it. Obviously, we do want to satisfy player requests, particularly when it's a common request. And hopefully reasonably straightforward. I think the first hesitation I've got is that we've already got over 600 blocks in Stormworks, and the armour revamp would essentially just be a copy and paste of all the existing basic blocks, including the wedges and the pyramids and so on. I think we'd need all of them for an armour revamp update, because I think if we just did the basic cube, it wouldn't be enough. I think players would immediately just ask for all the wedges and the other parts. And then if we did that, there's a lot of block duplication where it's the same blocks a second time, and then it's going to be difficult and confusing to understand, which block is which, and players can be accidentally building their vehicles from armor blocks that are too heavy and so on. So I would have to solve that. Maybe we could deal with it in the editor in terms of changing the thumbnail somehow, putting a little symbol on the thumbnail to show it's an armor block. I don't know, just to make it a little more clear, because that's our first hesitation. And the second problem is that it kind of violates kind of one of the main principles of Stormworks, which is it's a generalized block building game. That's to say that real planes, helicopters, boats, ships, and so on aren't all made from the same materials. They're not made from the same construction techniques, and there's a massive specialization in the materials and techniques that you would use to design and build any specific type of vehicle. But in Stormworks, that's not the case. You're making all these different vehicles from the same blocks, and that's the gamification of the game, right? That's why it works as a game, and it's been simplified. So then for us to say, okay, well, we're not having different material blocks, but then all of a sudden we're having armor blocks, I'm not sure that makes sense. Other than it's a frequently requested thing, I don't know. So the answer is I don't know. We're not really decided on that. We could do the armor revamp. We could add a series of armor blocks, but we're unsure if it's a good idea. I would say on the boundary, it could go either way. Next question. Will you build highways for less off-road vehicles? The answer to this is yes. We've got a big, I would say, series of content updates coming out, where you will see big expansion to the Stormworks world. I don't know when that's going to happen, but it's hopefully going to be this year, and you're going to get loads of highways and train line, a lot of it, and some big open flat spaces as well if you want to build your own racetracks and so on. So it's going to be a really good update. Really excited for that one. I don't want to say too much more than that, but well, yeah, the answer is yes. Next question. Is there plans on making a new Stormworks in a new engine? I guess it's like before. I would say we're not actually really working on anything to any great extent right now. We would like to make a new game, You know, we don't want Stormworks to be the last game we ever make. We made Carrier Command 2, and we really enjoyed that because it was fresh code, because it was a fresh engine, because we got to do a lot of stuff right in ways that we perhaps wish we'd done them in the first place in Stormworks. I think we'd like to do a new vehicle building game, but I think right now our focus is still on Stormworks, and we're currently talking about what a new game could be. We're currently intending to do some prototyping, but we're like still at the stage where we're just making the tools in order to do the prototypes, rather than being any further along. So that is extreme. That is like so early that it's not even really started yet. It's still in the discussion stages, I would say, but there is certainly the intention there. Not really any firm plans, but yes, we do have an intention to make a new vehicle building game, hopefully at some point in the future. Next question. Do you have any plans to add larger, more major islands? I think I've just answered that one, and the answer is yes. I think that's a duplicate I missed. On to the next question. I would like to know if co-op building will ever be added. So to this one, I would say yes, another feature request that we know is a very frequently requested feature. We would like to add it if it wasn't so much work. The entire vehicle editor is a huge amount of code. I mean, I think Stormworks in total is about a million lines of code, which is absolutely huge. I think it's a massive piece of software. There's a huge amount of features there. There's a huge amount of code paths there. There's a lot of code, and a lot of that is the vehicle editor, and it's all designed to work in single player, and to now add multiplayer in would be largely a rewrite. So it might be too much work to add it in at this stage. It's something we've discussed. We've been aware of for a very long time that this was something that players wanted, and was frequently requested. But for us to add it in at this stage, I don't know, it might be too difficult, it might be too much work to extend the game in that direction. It certainly wasn't something we intended to do when we started making Stormworks. So sometimes we discuss it and we're like, we keeps kind of coming back up again. Can we do this? Because players really want it. We want to do it. It'd be a great thing. But usually the conversation ends up, it's too much work, and maybe it's going to be easier if we just consider that for the next game instead, and we just understand better what's important to players as we go into the next game. So I don't know. And the answer as above. It could happen when we've got less going on. It might get considered. But any time in the next kind of 6 to 12 months seems unlikely. Next question. Will you begin to credit those whose images you've used in the announcements so players can find vehicles? As this has come up a fair few times in this question and answer video, and I would say that the first problem is that these screenshots are coming from the vehicle showcase channel on the Stormworks Discord. In the subject it says that this is where the images come from. If you do want your screenshots to be in the announcements, then do post them to the vehicle showcase channel. We usually pick the screenshots on a Friday afternoon UK time, so if you submitted your screenshots Friday morning or Thursday, that makes it most likely for them to be considered. Usually we kind of go back 1, 2, 3 days on the vehicles showcase to find enough stuff, and we'll pick them just because we think the screenshots that look awesome, or the creations look awesome. The nature of the vehicle showcase channel is that people are posting stuff that isn't necessarily on the workshop yet. It's often stuff they're currently working on and they haven't uploaded to the workshop yet. They're posting it because they're excited about it and because they're currently working on it. But that does mean then that it's not going to be possible for players to find said vehicles because they're not on the workshop, and we understand this request, and we do wish it was straightforward for us to just credit the vehicle creators, but it's specifically the request is to credit the vehicle creators, and we only know who actually posted the screenshot. We don't necessarily know who created the vehicle, and I don't think there's any real way for us to know to a great extent exactly who the vehicle creator is. Someone might be screenshotting their game playing with someone else's creations. They're not necessarily putting full credits every time they submit the screenshot, for example. So we'd only ever be able to really credit who created the screenshot, not necessarily who created the vehicle. And I think the issue there then is, well, we're going to end up crediting the wrong person. Also, there's a situation where often vehicles are actually collaborations, so there actually might be several credits. I suppose there's a little bit of fear that we'd get it wrong, essentially. So if we started to try and do our best guess, well, we're going to get it wrong a lot, and that's going to upset players, I think, more than not being credits right now. Because if we start getting it wrong, that we're going to have to start issuing corrections. Players will be upset that the wrong person got credited for their creation. There's no need for that. I think we don't want to take the responsibility of being the official authority on who created which vehicle. I think if it is something of interest to you, sorry, but a lot of these vehicles are not actually already on the workshop. But you can certainly find the credits. They will be in the last few days of the vehicle showcase channel submissions. We do wish it was straightforward to credit people, but it's just not. It's logistically, it's quite difficult, and we're just really worried about getting it wrong. Next question. Do you plan on adding any more urban areas to the new islands that you've teased? So yes, as I've said, we do have the new content coming. There are plenty of, I would say, industrial zones in the new content that some have buildings in and are a bit more built up, but we don't have the intention of adding a city. City has been requested several times. I think the hesitation is that there's the physics implication. Sometimes with the physics, if a vehicle is surrounded by physics, i.e. it's got it below, left, right and above, for example trains going through tunnels, you'll see this, where the game does struggle with performance a little bit when you're in a tunnel, and that's just because the physics calculation is quite complicated, and there's no kind of, well, once the physics is within another piece of physics, there's no kind of earlier exit for the physics code to optimize that calculation. So it ends up doing the full physics computation, even if things aren't actually touching. It has to do the full computation in order to establish that. So with this built-up area in areas, I think there's the risk that you're in a lot of situations where vehicles are within other close proximity on several sides to physics in the game, and that's going to cause performance impact, I expect. Especially with Stormworks as well. I think the nature of the game is that you don't have these like fake doors and fake windows and buildings that you can't go inside like in some of the games. I think with Stormworks, I think very much the intention is for there to not be any fake stuff. Everything is mechanical. Everything is, it's got systems behind it, and I think if there was a door, then you should be able to open it and go inside a building and so on. So that could be just too hard work on the performance of the game, and we're very sensitive. We've been working really hard to optimize the game, and we don't want to be making our life any easier in terms of achieving better performance in the game. So I think urban areas are less likely, but there will be some cool new factory and industrial zones that would make quite good built-up zones. Next question. I'm a fan of the steam power that was added, but do you think it's possible that we can add a piston engine that will allow us to be more compact and more efficient and make the classic puff puff? So the answer to this is yes, I do think this is possible. It's a minor update that we have planned, so you may get steam piston, you may get steam whistles. I don't know when, hopefully the next few months. But we'll have to wait and see when exactly that comes out. But it's something we are working on. Next question. Will buzzers ever get more sounds? Yes, so with this, we would love to add more sounds. The main factor that is holding us back, I think, is that we don't really have a sound engineer as part of the team. Is something we would love to have. There's certainly like the job opening, I would say, for a sound engineer to be part-time, couple of days a week perhaps, working from home basis. If we can find someone who is well qualified with a good portfolio, then we may very well make a hiring there. because we would love to do loads of audio stuff. I think we'd like to have more buzzer sounds. We'd like to do a lot of work on the audio. A lot of the sound effects we've had from our composer in the past, where we've done the big deliveries, but that's the kind of typically the way they work is they'll just take a big list of sounds, and then a few months later we'll get the full set of sounds back off them. And I think we're looking for someone who can be part of the team, who can be actively understanding what the game is, how the sounds are working within the game, and perhaps working on sounds with a shorter delivery time as well, where we can say, okay, well, let's do some more buzzer sounds, and they'll go away and work on that, and they understand the context and so on of what's going to happen, and they'll deliver the sound effects, and we can integrate them in, and they'll be part of the team rather than someone who's necessarily just taking a spreadsheet order, and maybe the lead-in time is a few months. I think that doesn't really work for the active development. So we'd like to have a sound engineer that was more part of the team. It's something we don't have at the moment, so ultimately what ends up happening is the programmers go and look for sound effects on like some kind of free sound website, and then they just kind of do their best. It's not as good as having a professional sound engineer, so that's something we would really like. If we could sort that out, then we would love to have more buzzers, more sounds, more engine sounds, loads more sound stuff. There's loads of work there. I think we could make really, really big improvements there. It's just a case of getting that person in place to have that role on the team. Next question. Will there be different modular engines and proper turbos? I don't think there will be different modular engines. I think we've already done modular engines once. I think, to some degree, there is a little bit of regret there with the modular engines. They have been very poorly received and unpopular in many ways, and we keep getting kind of the feedback that they're too easy to overheat. I think that a big problem with the modular engines is that we've added a lot of mechanics that aren't immediately obvious and not easy to access. We've tried to add the concept of consequence to the game, where it's possible to get something wrong as well as it's possible to get something right, and that tuning a modular engine well is an achievement, and that's part of the design process of the game. It is a block building design game. But I think ultimately players haven't really enjoyed that balance, haven't enjoyed that mechanic, so it's something we just don't really want to revisit. We don't think we're going to get anything more from adding different modular engines. The proper turbos question, I understand what you mean by this. You mean that you're looking for a component that can convert fluid flow into torque as well as torque into fluid flow, and also that is something that's not going to happen because there's a problem with the conservation of energy going from fluid flow to torque. We have managed to add it in, for example, with the steam turbines, but that's a very limited context and it doesn't work from a broader point of view. So yes, the situation there is that the turbos, you've got pumps, but you do have to drive the pump with torque. Well, there's two different types. There's turbochargers, and there's also the other one, isn't there, that are very similar impeller pump designs. One's driven by the power from the engine, one's driven from the power from the exhaust. Obviously, you have to do the one that's driven from the power of the engine, or an electric turbo, or something like that. So yes, no, there's not going to be proper turbos, and no, not going to be any new modular engines. Will space be added is the next question. I think this is another feature request that we do like. I think if space was added, it would probably be a DLC because it's very different to what Stormworks currently is. It is something that we'd like to do. It is something that we're discussing. It's not currently planned, so it's not going to be one of the next couple of major updates. Could it be the major update after that? It is very, very frequently requested. It's been come up a lot in this Q&A questions, so it is something that we would like to do. I would say it's not currently planned, so I don't know, but I would say this is, I think, one of the particularly more likely expansions to the game. Our focus obviously recently has been on improving the quality and dealing with the bugs backlog. That's going to continue for a while, and I think the other content updates, we're really trying to focus on the core game and what makes Stormworks, and just I guess finish off some of the elements where we feel like we can push them a little bit further, the existing parts of the game. We've got a little bit of content update. We've got a little bit of stuff that's going to make an impact to career. We've got a little bit of stuff that's going to make impact to missions and so on. And we're enjoying making those improvements. We don't necessarily want to get sidetracked too much, but if we were, I think space would be that update. So I think that one is more likely, but we're not committing to anything yet, and we're just going to focus on finishing off the features that we've got planned at the moment. Next question. Previously we were given the really neat distance lighting effect. Would it be possible to make this an optional tick box when selecting the light part, so the interior lighting won't always be seen from far away? So this has recently had some changes made to it, so I can talk reasonably informed as if I just looked at the code actually, because I was looking at this not too long ago. The distance lighting effect we have changed recently. I think we've reduced the distance carry for it by about a factor, I would say 3 perhaps. It doesn't, the distant point light FLIRs that you get when the light is far away, they do fade out a lot earlier now. It also does react to the brightness of the light, so if you just colour the light so it's not as bright, that also has the same effect, and it also means that the flare doesn't show from as far. Are we going to add a tick box? I would say probably not. I think it doesn't really make sense that some lights have flares and some don't. I think the lights should just work the same for all lights in the game, because you know, a light is a light. But we've already got the colouring and stuff, and we have made these recent changes, so hopefully that will fulfill your request. The next player asks for FLIR cameras to help find people overboard with small vehicles in distress. Same answer again, we're not currently working on it, it's not currently planned. Maybe that's something we would do in the future. It would be a lot of work, I think, because we'd have to basically write a whole new renderer for the game, so I don't know if that is something we would decide we wanted to do in the future, but it is a common request and it would fit the game very well. The search and rescue theme, and also it'd be awesome with weapons DLC as well, so I do like the request. I think it's just a case of if we are going to decide to do it or not in the future, because we've only got so much person power, so to speak. We've only got so much development time, so I don't know whether that would get picked or not, but so it's a very similar answer to the other feature requests. Next question, will we ever see any sort of special forces gear? So it's another feature request. This one says, like night vision goggles, ballistic helmet and plate carrier. So with these feature requests, it is a lottery whether we're working on it or not. This is one that we are actually looking at. So helmet mounted NVGs there's no plans for, but ballistic helmet, plate carrier and body armour could be something that we are looking at doing. We've also got some of the weapons outfits planned for weapons, so that could happen. Yes, that is quite likely. As a minor update, I would say in the next few 3 to 6 months, somewhere around there. Next question, are there plans to improve the flight physics? Planes or glide bombs can actually glide. So the answer to this is that if we change the fundamentals of physics, then it's going to change the behaviour of already made vehicles in the game. There is a massive implication there that we would end up breaking a lot of player creations. I don't really think we have the authority to do that at this point. I think that we have to treat the players with a great deal of respect in terms of the creations they've made, and for all the creators who've uploaded their creations or not uploaded their creations, I don't think we can break all their vehicles like that. I just don't think it's an option. It's not something I think we've got the authority to do, really. I think that the players deserve more respect than that. It ultimately does mean, though, that we can't then make these changes. I will say just a little bit more about this. This is very much a problem of games as a service, in terms of, you know, you've got this new thing. Games never used to work like this, but you've got quite a lot of games now are actively updating and making content expansions and improvements on a kind of a regular basis. This, I think, is called games as a service. Often you usually get the games are on subscription, or there's some other kind of reoccurrent billing, or there's a lot of DLC or something like that. That's not the case with Stormworks. You've only had one DLC in 4 or 5 years, and most of the updates have been free. But ultimately, with games in that model, there's always a huge resistance to change. So even if something isn't as good as it should have been in the first place, or could have been in the first place, it's very difficult to change it, because players just get used to that mechanic, that balance. They don't want to relearn the game. So it's very difficult for us to change that. With Stormworks, it's a particularly big issue because of the workshop, because we don't want to break players' creations. So anything to do with changing the fundamental physics of the game, I don't think it's going to be possible at that point. I certainly do agree. I think that I would prefer the balance was different. I think the balance was a little more realistic in this sense. But it is going to be very, very difficult to change that now. It's out of our control, I would say. It's really not within our power to make such a drastic change to the game at this stage, because the players' creations need to be respected. So I think it's very, very unlikely that we are going to make any fundamental changes to the laws of physics in Stormworks. Next question. Will you ever add VR support? To this, I think I can give a fairly certain answer of no. We do have experience making VR games with Carrier Command 2 VR, and I think from the experience there, I think any VR developer will tell you that the scale of your VR world is extremely important, extremely sensitive. If you look at games like VTOL VR, for example, you've got all of your controls, all of your buttons within arm's reach, and that kind of seems obvious, but when you actually start designing and building one of those cockpits, you realize just how sensitive the individual positions of all of the buttons and controls are, that you want to actually tweak their positions by just a few centimeters to make it as comfortable as it can be. With Stormworks, that's obviously not going to be possible. Everything's on a voxel grid and the vehicles are already created. So while in your head it might make a lot of sense to say, oh well, I've got this awesome cockpit game, I've got to create this awesome cockpit vehicle, let's make it VR, that'd be really cool. The reality is that it's not going to be very good, and the VR games, they need to be built VR first and VR from the start in order to bring all of these really important considerations into the game design at a fundamental level. I think you'd be sat there at the VR, in your VR cockpit in Stormworks, saying, oh, I can't quite reach this button, and this button's out of reach, and this controller doesn't quite in the right position, I just want to move it a few inches left and a few inches up, and that stuff's not going to work in Stormworks. And so I don't think it's a good idea. I think it would be a huge distraction from us as well, and we should just really be focused on the core game rather than doing a big feature change of direction like that. So I love VR games, really cool, big fan of VTOL VR. I don't think Stormworks is going to convert well. Next question. Any hopes for improved wheel physics? This is a really difficult question for us to answer. The reality is, I'll just be honest, we have tried it before. We tried an experimental branch, and we certainly did make some grounds, but I suppose rebalancing things to a place that all players were happy with was a task that we were really struggling with, I will say. I think players all want improvements to wheels, but they don't necessarily all want the same improvements to wheels, and I think when we're changing something, it's very difficult for us to make all players happy, and obviously it's going to change what wheeled vehicles are. I think it's also difficult for us we'd obviously have to deprecate the old wheels and replace them with a new set, I think, because obviously we can't break all of the existing wheeled vehicles, which is fine, we could do that, but the issue does remain that it's going to be very difficult to rebalance the numbers in a way that all players are happy with, and I think that the old wheels, they might be undergripped, but they're also overpowered in certain other ways. There, torque to power ratio is actually extremely high, completely ridiculously high in fact, and for us to tune that down is going to mean that in some circumstances they're not as good as the old vehicles, the old wheels, or the current wheels, but only it's kind of a contextual thing, only in certain contexts, and that's just the nature of Stormworks. So I think we would love to improve the wheel physics, but it's going to be extremely difficult to impossible for us to make all players happy if we were to start changing the way wheels work. It's going to be a painful update for us. There's going to be a lot of unhappy people and a lot of happy people. It's going to be a painful update. Something I don't think we quite have the energy for right now. So yeah, very, very honest answer there. Obviously not the answer that everyone wants, but I'm sorry, but that's the honest truth at the moment. Something we could reconsider in the future, and we're always changing our mind on stuff, but right now we just don't have the energy for that one. Next question. Will there be any new components for people making cars? Differentials, compact gearbox, drop down value so you can have as many gears as you want. So with this one I will say probably not adding that feature anytime soon. It's something we've not got planned. Whether we think it's a good idea or not, I don't know. I think the request for differentials, I don't really want to make the game any more complicated, and I think a lot of the complaints we're getting from players is around, I guess, the complex nature and how difficult it is to understand the mechanics that are driving what's going on, particularly with the smaller vehicles, the modular engines, and the torque delivery and so on. So I think differentials, adding the concept of differentials, is probably not such a good idea. Compact gearbox 1x3 with some kind of drop down value. Well, you've already got the 1x1 gearbox, so you could just stack 3 of those up if you wanted. I suppose you're suggesting, well, can I avoid doing the microcontroller that would also be required? Yeah, maybe that is a part that could potentially happen. New gearbox with multiple gears, that could potentially work. Maybe some kind of automatic gearbox where you have 2 bools and you can just cycle up and down on them or something like that. That could be cool. Yeah, we're open to that. It's not a planned feature, but I think that's a good request. So that could potentially happen at some point in the future. It's also possible we will never get around to it. I can't say, it's just too early at this point. Will there be a way to customize certain blocks without having to edit the XML file? So I understand the request from this. We love the XML edited vehicles. They look awesome. I think some of the stuff that players have done with XML editing is really cool. And we understand, why players are doing it, because it does look good. But I would also say, from a design point of view, Stormworks is a block building game, and we didn't add the scaling options and so on for the reason that the idea is that you're building everything from a preset collection of blocks, and you've only got the number of blocks you've got to build stuff, and that's kind of one of the constraints of the design of the games. Some players managed to break this constraint with the XML editing, and at first we're like, oh, I don't know if this is a good thing, but then the XML edited vehicles do look awesome. We love them. So I guess this question in 2 parts. I would probably say that we are leaning towards leaving players just having the XML editing. I think it does break the fundamental concept of Stormworks as a block building game if suddenly you can just stretch, skew and twist all of the existing blocks. It also creates a big technical problem for us. I think you'll note that with the XML editing is entirely cosmetic. If we were to do it, it couldn't just be cosmetic, it would also have to be physical. And it's going to break a lot of the existing systems with the physics simplification, the physics collapsing. You're going to be able to create these really weird physics shapes with the skews and the scales and so on. And that's not going to work well with our existing physics simplification. We've got our physics lossless compression, which greatly improves the performance of the game. That's going to get broken a little bit by this stuff. So I think it's probably better. It's a kind of a unofficial player authored feature, rather than it being officially supported, because then we have to officially support the physics generation and so on, which isn't going to work, and I don't think it makes sense for us to only support the visual tweaking of parts. I don't think that makes sense. I think players are going to say no, that's a bug, that it's not affecting the physics too. So, and I think they'd be right. So I think that it's best that we don't extend the game in that way. It's going to create more problems than it solves. Next question: when will the Kraken be spawnable? The answer is very soon. It's going to be announced soon in the major updates coming out in the next major update, and you're going to get details on the next major update extremely soon, within days hopefully. So yeah, very soon. Next question: will there be more steam parts like pistons and whistles? So as many of these questions are just feature requests, and some of the questions they get the answer in the affirmative, and in fact this one is going to be that yes, this is something we are looking at. We would like to add steam piston part and steam whistle part, so that may very well happen in the future. Wheels we have no plans for, but again, I've said it's something we would like to do, and I would say it's probably one of the more likely ones, because I think it is relatively straightforward for us to achieve that. So I think it probably makes sense for us to do more train wheels as well. So yeah, the steam wheels as discussed. Next question: why did you choose to use your own game engine instead of an existing one like Unity or Unreal? Well, I could talk about this for a very long time. I think with Unity and Unreal, they're very good for prototypes, and they're also very good for games that are within the set of genres and formats that the developers of Unity and Unreal were considering when they were making that engine. You know, you kind of got the drag and drop style development there, and if there's a preset or a tutorial example, or just the right existing code components, it can accelerate development a lot. I think with a game with Stormworks, where you've got the ocean physics, you've got the massive open world, it's 256 kilometers across or something. You've got a lot of streamed content. You've got a lot of very complicated vehicles which have a lot of data to them. What you're very quickly going to find out is that you can't get that to work in an engine like Unity or Unreal. You need to have a custom built engine that you can tweak every element of it to specifically suit the tasks of that game. So for example, in a game like Unity or Unreal, you're going to have some kind of like base entity object, which is going to have a lot of data associated with it, and so with a game like Stormworks, you might have your components as some kind of Unity base object or Unreal base object. As you start to stack those up, what you're going to find is that the Unity objects and the Unreal objects have a lot of base data that you don't need and don't want, or a lot of systems that you don't need or don't want. And there's also, I think with Unity and Unreal, you've also got the situation where a lot of stuff is on the Unity store, the Unreal store, the pre-built code objects and so on that you can just buy and drop into your game. They're not going to work either, because you might be able to do a really good ocean prototype really quickly, or a vehicle builder prototype, or an aerodynamics prototype very quickly, but combining them all together and putting that in an open world game that can stream in and out, all of a sudden you actually realize that the part in the prototype is the easy bit, and actually getting the rest of it all to work together is actually the difficult part, and that's all done at the engine level. So even with these pre-built engines, you end up having to write a lot of the engine yourself anyway, and it's actually more difficult to adapt an existing engine to do what you want, rather than just to build a new one once there's a certain amount of adaptation required. And I think we're way past that now. I think most parts of the game engine are specifically adapted to Stormworks. Next question: will Stormworks ever have enemy infantry AI? So this is a great question. I think this is something we would like to do, and we've discussed. We would like to maybe have the enemies be able to hold a weapon and shoot at the player. Pathfinding is another question, and I think pathfinding might be too difficult, so they might not move. They might just be static sentries. If we do implement this feature, it's obviously not being worked on yet, but it is on the list of things we would like to get to. But the pathfinding would be a problem. So would they be walking around, moving around on vehicles? Would they be moving around on islands? I don't know, it's unlikely, and I think it's just because the pathfinding data isn't there, the pathfinding systems aren't there, and that will be quite difficult for us to start to deliver. So I'm not sure about that at the moment, but certainly having handheld weapon fighting would be possible to some degree. So yeah, we'll see what happens there, hopefully so. Next question, is fishing a thing we could see in the future? Or is it not a thing that devs are interested in implementing? I think it goes with the same answer as before. I actually can't remember if we've answered fishing yet in this dev Q&A, because it is very frequently requested. I did see this come up quite a lot in the questions. Unfortunately, it is the same answer as all the others. It's not something we are planning on doing right now. It is not something that we've got on a task list. It's not something we're working on. We might consider it when we've got less going on. I don't know. Next question, when are you guys going to fix the MacOS audio issues? Well, I've got good news here, is that we are going to fix them, and I think hopefully quite soon, I think in the next few weeks. What we're currently doing is we're rewriting all of the audio code in Stormworks, and this is because I think it's a change with the Apple libraries. So the Apple have done some kind of update, and unfortunately it's just broken the OpenAL audio for us in some very subtle way. We can see that the version, I think it was last working a very long time ago fully in version 1.2.28. We can see that build on Steam, we can play it, and we can see that there's no problems with the audio. However, if we go back to that exact source code and rebuild it now with the latest Apple compiling tools, then there is an issue. So it's something that hasn't actually changed in Stormworks. It's not something we've broken. It's something that's broken as part of Apple updating some library somewhere. It's completely unclear where that's happened. We've worked on it quite a bit. We couldn't figure it out, so we've decided to port the Carry Command 2 audio system to Stormworks and just use that because it's a better audio library. So yeah, we're working on that. It's a lot of work, but hopefully it'll be complete in the next few weeks, and the MacOS audio issues will finally be resolved. So sorry that's taken so long. The problem I think was that we were struggling to reproduce it. We could it doesn't happen in development mode either. It only happens in release mode. So we were working on the Mac trying to understand what the issue was, and we couldn't reproduce it because we were rebuilding old code just in development mode, and it wasn't until we tried building it in release mode, which it requires different flow, that we realized that actually it was a problem that we could reproduce. So that's taken a very long time, so sorry about that, but I'm pleased to say that fix is coming, and hopefully it's going to fix some other audio, I would say some audio feature requests as well, hopefully, but we will get to that in the next few weeks. Next question, when is the mission UI from before 1.0 going to be reimplemented? I think the answer to this is I think it's unlikely to ever be reimplemented. We're trying to move forward on the game, and we certainly got rid of the mission UI because we felt that very, very few players were using it. There was certainly almost no workshop content with the old mission system on the workshop, so it had a very, very low adoption rate, and we felt that we could do better. I think that the add-on Lure community is growing, and we are making progress there, but we've got no intention to kind of go backwards, and we've got no intention of maybe implementing two systems to do the same thing. And I think the Lure add-on system does do a similar thing. I understand that some players feel like, well, I don't want to have to learn Lure to do the mission stuff, but I think the reality is the players just weren't using the mission stuff in the first place, so I don't think we've really taken much away out of the game there. I don't think we want to go backwards on that feature. We're just looking forwards to improving the game, working on the core parts of the game, and certainly developing more content ourselves, and we know that for us we need the Lure add-on API to do that. The old missions UI wasn't going to be suitable for us to expand the content within the game to the level that we felt was necessary, and so on. So yeah, the answer is it's very unlikely to be coming back. Next question, compressed gas for submarines propulsion. Another feature request. I think this is something we might have looked at some point. This could happen actually, I don't know. If we did space DLC, we'd certainly have to look at having air in containers and so on. So yeah, I mean this could happen. I'm not sure if it's something we're working on, so it's one of the more likely ones to happen, I would say. We might already have looked at this. It's probably not going to happen in the next few months, but at some point further in the future, I think that is more likely a feature request to be implemented, but I can't say for sure. Next question, will there be folders to categorize saved vehicles? So this is a very popular request. Not so much in this dev Q&A actually, I think it's only come up once in this dev Q&A, but it is on the issue tracker. We're well aware of it, it's one of the more popular requests. What I would say is that we don't have plans at the moment, and maybe we'll look at it in the future if we've got less going on. I'm sorry, but almost all of these questions are feature requests. We can't implement them all. We do have only a limited amount of resources, and our focus is on the feature updates that we're currently working on and the bugs fixes and improvements, and we really want to get a lot of the bug fixes and improvements sorted out before we move on too much as well. So that is the answer to that. Next question, will there be an update with bulk goods like iron ore and sand, or even steel beams and wood? This would mean very nice for a bulk carrier. I do like this feature request a lot, and it is something that we are considering as part of a future major update, but that's at the consideration stage at the moment. You know, it has been written down and we are talking seriously about it, but no work has been done on it yet. But I would like, you know, I quite like the idea of maybe some kind of some industrial goods update or something like that, where you might have more of the oil handling stuff, you might have a little bit of extraction mechanics, and you know, could we add some refinement mechanics as well? I don't know. I think that would be really cool though. I think that would fit quite well with the game, what players are doing with the game as well, and a lot of the creations already are built around material extraction, moving, refining, transportation and so on, especially with the expansion to the roads and the expansion to the railway lines. And this could be a really cool update. But so I just get excited about the game like the players do. So I don't know, we haven't started working on it, but I think that's one of the more likely ones to happen. That'd be quite cool. Next question, will friendly AI ever exist? So again, that's one of our feature requests we're not working on. I don't know, sorry, but it could do. I think it would be a cool aspect to the AI thing. I think possibly less likely because there's the performance impact of having allied AI. So I don't know whether it would make it into an official add-on, but what I would say is that if we were to implement it ourselves, we would implement it entirely within the add-on API using Lua. So this is something that players could actually do themselves. If that's a mod they wanted to make for the game, then that is actually something that could be added entirely by players. There's no actual game code required there other than what you would be typing into the Lua API. So yeah, less likely from us, just I think because there will be the performance impact of adding the additional AI vehicles in, and we'd probably prefer to add enemy vehicles in if we were going to add more performance load on there. But you know, I don't know, we could consider it in the future, so we'll see. Next question, what things are you planning to do to help improve multiplayer even more? So we are currently, I think you're kind of seeing small improvements to multiplayer on kind of a every update basis at the moment. Obviously we did the recent multiplayer update. I think we just improved the look direction delay, where in some circumstances when you moved it was actually using an out-of-date move position, particularly if the server had lagged a little bit. Then you would actually move in the direction that you had cached from what the server sent you. I don't know why that was ever the case, but we fixed that now, so that doesn't happen anymore. You just move in the direction that you're looking. And so that makes things feel a little bit more responsive in some circumstances, in other circumstances a lot more responsive. We're also looking at the issue where when a vehicle loads in, I think there is some large chunk of data that gets sent across the network, and we're looking at making that asynchronous data. And the idea there is so that you don't get the freeze up that you sometimes get when a vehicle loads in on the client. So yeah, we're hoping that that will be resolved, and that's going to fix a fair few issues, because that is, I think, the main delay, the main lockup that you get in multiplayer. If we fix that, then it's going to be a lot closer to the single player experience, and you're going to not get these freezing spikes. When you get a freezing spike, the clients just add a little bit of buffering, and so you get a little bit of input lag for a few seconds after one of those server lockups. Hopefully we're going to fix that soon as well. So that's something we've got planned. Once we got to that point, we'll certainly be looking at multiplayer and seeing, well, what else needs to be improved. But right now, I think that is the main issue that we're aware of. I don't think off the top of my head we're aware of any specific multiplayer issues other than that. So we will be. I think there's also some weather stuff that's still getting fixed. I think that's coming out just come out in this last update as well. There's not many things, if anything, that we're currently aware of other than the stuff I've just discussed. If there is, let us know on the issue tracker, and we're very happy to have a chat about it. But I think if there's just a general complaint of, oh, well, multiplayer doesn't work, there's not so much we can do about that at the moment. We just need that little bit of extra detail to understand specifically what we should be looking at to reproduce the issue. And if we reproduce the issue, I think we can look at improving things. So yes, please, if we can get that help there of understanding exactly what the problems are, we're happy to look more at it. But yeah, it's an ongoing process, and we're playing the multiplayer, and we're having a great time doing so. Next question. Will there ever be more information to get information about pixels, such as being able to read colours of pixels from a camera feed? So the answer is no, because this is technically impossible. I think we've answered this before. To get the data from a pixel on the camera feed, we need two things. You need to request the data back from the graphics processor unit. This is something that graphic processor units do not support in a clear way. You can do it with an asynchronous readback, but that gives you the data a few frames later, so you can't get it in a live sense. And also, we don't render the screens if you're not looking at them, so there's no color data to read if you're not looking at them, and that's a performance improvement and a massive performance saver as well. So how can you have logic that depends on being able to read the color of a pixel? If that pixel isn't being rendered, of course it's not technically possible, so that feature is never going to come. Next question, will there ever be stormwoofs? I would love there to be. I guess we'll have to wait and see. It's one I'm more positive about, let me put it that way, but let's wait and see on that one. I don't know. Next question, when is there going to be even more weapons and weapons parts, like a handheld anti-tank gun? Yeah, the handheld RPG sounds cool. I think that's something we could potentially do, so that's worth us considering as like a minor update that could impact weapons DLC at some point. I don't know. Not currently planned, not currently working on it, might consider it when we've got less going on. Next question, will we see laser guidance for missiles, or maybe smaller gimbal cameras for military vehicles? So the answer is, I would say probably yes. I think this is a component we are looking at, and yeah, we'd like to add that in a minor update at some point in the next few months or so. Next question, will you add the Kraken on multiplayer? The answer is yes. It's going to be, the Kraken button is coming, and it's going to be here in the next major update. It's going to be awesome. You'll be clicking that Kraken button, spawning the Krakens, and yeah, that's coming in the next major update, which you're hearing from. You'll get a release date on that very soon, in the next week or so, hopefully. We'll finish the video here then. Thank you very much to everyone who submitted the questions. I will note almost everything is a feature request in these Q&As, and unfortunately the answer is that we don't really have much more planned other than what we've had. So we've managed to leak a little bit of information about what we are currently working on or currently have planned. Beyond that, I don't know what we're going to be doing or what we're going to want to do in 6 months' time. What we're going to think is important in 12 months' time, we'll decide then. So I just don't know. But yeah, unfortunately these videos are just mostly feature requests, mostly asking if this feature's coming or that feature's coming. And that's the nature of them. Hopefully we've managed to answer your questions. There's a lot more questions than I've answered here. I think I've only answered maybe 10 to 20% of them. But hopefully I've answered your question. Thank you very much to everyone submitting them though, and we will see you in the next video. Thank you, bye bye.